need to be tested. And so federal prosecutors, I think, will want to continue to look at that evidence to determine whether there are any other potential target defendants, whether there was a conspiracy to cover up the sex trafficking ring, which seems to be a very likely outcome given the plea deal, the travesty of justice that Mimi refers to down in Florida. I don't think that this case ends with Jeffrey Epstein's death.
Let me go back to Jonathan Dienst to get before we lose you. Are we expecting any public statements from the people who ran this jail as to how on earth this person was alone, allegedly, and was able to either remove himself or be removed from the scope of justice, by leaving this world? Like, is there going to be a public statement? Are you expecting anything today?
No, there will be a public statement, I'm told. I don't think it's going to answer all the questions you have. I think it's probably going to be very basic in nature, given what we saw after the previous incident. They did not say much except to confirm that something had taken place. There's an incredible photo on the New York Post website right now that shows Epstein being wheeled in by paramedics this morning, and they're working hard to try to revive him as he's wheeled into the downtown hospital where he was pronounced dead about 7:39 this morning. Again, he was found around 6:30 this morning. We are told now from 5 sources he was alone in his cell, and that suicide appears to be the leading cause here. But of course, as you're hearing, there will be an investigation. In the previous incident, there was less clarity, in part because he shared a cell with a roommate, and the defense lawyer for that other inmate had said the two were getting along fine, no assault took place, and that Epstein apparently had tried to take his own life in that previous incident. How serious an attempt that was, there's a lot of debate and question about that, whether it was just a cry out for attention. Again, we are told from multiple sources he was having a very difficult time inside the MCC. He's an accused child sex offender. He is accustomed to the life of luxury with his mansions, and now he's sitting in the MCC, which is a very secure facility where drug dealers, terrorists, you name it, are held in that facility. He was put in a separate wing for high-risk inmates. First he had a roommate, then after that initial incident, he was moved to his own cell, and for a time was on suicide watch. We only have one official, but it's a good one official telling us he was recently taken off suicide watch, but remained in an isolated cell. We're waiting to hear clarity on that detail from the Bureau of Prisons to see exactly when and if he was taken off suicide watch and what that meant for the items and clothing he had in his own cell. Because if you're on suicide watch, we're told there are no sheets, there are no blankets, that you are watched quite carefully. But of course, we also hear stories about people who are on suicide watch and in isolation, and they wind up using their pants or whatever minimal clothing they are provided. So the question is, how closely was he being watched? Is the expectation 24/7, or is it hourly? Is it every 3 hours? What is the correct protocol with an inmate like this? And I think those are some of the questions that need to be raised and need to be answered. But everything we're being told from now 5 sources is that this is an apparent suicide.
Jonathan Dienst, great reporter. Thank you very much. Really appreciate you being here to give us some answers on that. I have a lot more questions, so I'm going to let everybody take a quick break. Everybody take a quick breather. We're going to take a quick break, and we'll come right back.
A lot of unanswered questions. They might get to the bottom of it now and try to find out who he's associated with and who in his legion of famous friends and entertainers and politicians might have participated in some of this underage sex that you heard so much about, some involving girls as young as 12 years old. Again, so much we don't know, including how he was able to pull off killing himself in the first place. We are efforting other updates on this. We will have investigators who will follow how this could have happened, how a man under 24/7 surveillance could have had this missed in the first place. In the meantime, the political fallout with former Ted Cruz campaign pollster Chris Wilson, Democratic strategist David Burstein, and Slansky and Partners President Lee Carter. leaving aside the timing of this and how it could happen, the political fallout for this, it ensnares Republicans and Democrats alike. But I'm wondering where it goes now, and if there is any fallout. What do you think?
You know, I would say that, you know, with a recent revelation that you've got Richardson, you've got some Democrats that are coming out, you would say, well, the Democrats are going to be in trouble here. But it cuts both ways here. I don't think it hurts any one party more than the other party. If the Democrats are they're going to go after Democrats, all they have to do is show the picture of President Trump with Epstein and the game over. So I don't think this
From decades ago.
From decades ago. I just don't think it matters. It's a symbol and it's a story that people are talking about. So on both sides, I think that everybody best leave this one alone.
Well, I don't know in politics if that happens.
Well, I'm sure people will try to make hay out of it. My guess is that it's probably not the smartest strategy if anyone wants to try to make hay out of it. I mean, this is a guy who was a disgusting human being who did terrible things, and I think that people would be best to focus on that and focus on the investigation. And frankly, it raises a broader issue that I think Hickenlooper was just talking about before, which is, who is going to be the candidate for making sure that all these powerful people who continue to abuse their power over and over again in different ways, financial, sexual, whatever it is, how can we change our justice system so that these people, I mean, Jeffrey Epstein went through had these charges almost 10 years ago against him, and it's very obvious that case was handled poorly, and yet it's for people who are rich and powerful. They seem to have one set of treatment versus people who are not.
I'm not, a lawyer. Of course, I do know that it was only, yesterday that this self-identified victim had referred to individuals like former Senator George Mitchell, former Governor Bill Richardson, big money manager Bob Gubin. Again, they're innocent until proven guilty, and all have denied these allegations. But that was dripping out.
It was.
And I'm wondering if that continues now.
I'm not someone who typically believes in conspiracy theories, but whenever you've got someone who's under 24-hour suicide watch, I think I may suspend my disbelief of conspiracy theories until proven otherwise at this point. I agree with what both Lee and David said. I think we've got to be real careful here before talking about any names. We need to remember that people are innocent until proven guilty, no matter what charges may be thrown out against them. These charges are so disgusting and scurrilous that I'm hesitant to even mention names associated with them, because if they are ultimately proven false, how does someone regain their reputation after being charged with something like
the old
this?
Ray Donovan thing, how do I get my good name?
Yeah, exactly. Having said all that, if they are proven guilty, and this is true, then there's not a dark enough place in hell for the people who committed these types of crimes.
Lee, I'm wondering too, and David touched on this idea that if you have money and influence and the right people, he certainly experienced that a decade ago and got a pretty cushy deal. And there might have been reasons for that. The backstory on that was that they'd not gotten the deal there was a risk that he wouldn't have done any jail time.
Right.
So I get that. But I'm wondering if this whole drama, regardless how it ends up, will change that approach to treating the very wealthy and well-connected differently than we do average folks.
I would hope so.
All right, what happens now after the apparent death by suicide of Jeffrey Epstein, the 66-year-old billionaire who palled around with some very powerful people? What happens now in an investigation that looked like it was getting some promising results early on? The former House Oversight Committee chairman, former Republican South Carolina Congressman Trey Gowdy with us now. Congressman, what do you think? Where does this case go now?
Well, the case against him is over, but to the extent there are others who aided, if there's sufficient factual predicate, they can still be charged. I am heartbroken only for the victims who were denied an opportunity to see their attacker in a very different position in court. He's not in control. He's not in power. He's not calling the shots. He's in court in a jumpsuit and handcuffs. And for a lot of victims, that final image provides closure to the extent you can have it. So I'm sorry for them, but he wasn't going to testify against others, I don't think. I certainly would not give him a cut in time to go implicate people who may have been less culpable. That makes no sense in the criminal justice system. I will say this, Neil. You can't get the death penalty for anything other than taking another life. But most Americans think you ought to be able to get it for committing a sex assault on a child. The Supreme Court disagrees, but most Americans, if we were to have a hierarchy of crimes, crimes against children, including sexual crimes against children, would be right up there near the top of it. So I'm glad he's dead, but I'm sorry for the victims that they are denied an opportunity to see him in a different light.
You know, he was under this suicide watch, Congressman. A lot of people are still scratching their heads how he could have committed suicide in the first place, assuming he was under 24/7 surveillance, either in person or via a security cam. How could that happen?
Well, some of us are still scratching our heads at how Jack Ruby could shoot Lee Harvey Oswald. And I think that may have been at a police station, wasn't it? So, look, we're 2 hours in. I'm a big believer in gathering the facts first, and then you can draw whatever conclusions you want from the facts. The videotape doesn't lie. It doesn't forget. So to the extent that there's video monitoring, talk to the guards. People, particularly criminals, particularly high-end criminals, are very creative when it comes to either escaping, taking their own life. That's how they've evaded capture thus far, is they are creative. So I'm going to withhold judgment until I know exactly how it happened and who allowed it to happen.
That's a great concept there, Congressman. Thank you very, very much.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Trey Gowdy. All right, we're going to try to get more on this and exactly what transpired. Remember, guilt by association is a little extreme. Simply because you hung out with a guy, either now or years ago, doesn't mean you did anything that guy is alleged to have done. We'll have more to this.